It's my favorite segment of the week, the Steelers Talk mailbag here. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today I'm going to be answering your questions on the black and gold here as we get closer and closer and closer to Steelers training camp in Latrobe at the end of July. But before we get into the questions today, make sure you click that subscribe button. Join the most interactive Steelers fan community anywhere on YouTube. We go live at least twice a week on usually Mondays and Thursdays. We do watch parties for every single Steelers game, the largest Steelers watch parties anywhere on YouTube. All 100% free, guys. Daily, informative Steelers content for you guys to enjoy. So if you want all that, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. First one coming in from my man, DJ KJ, says, when will T.J. Watt sign a new contract? I think it's going to be closer to training camp. And, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, guys, because I know Steelers fans just want this to get done, all right? It's kind of similar to, like, the Aaron Rodgers situation where it's like, we just don't want to, get close to training camp still wondering. But the reality of the situation, guys, is that deadlines make deals, and the start of training camp is a kind of soft deadline of sorts that a lot of these, deals end up happening by. And, this is just the way that the NFL offseason works. If there's a player that wants to get paid a certain amount of money, team doesn't want to pay that amount, it usually, drags on all throughout the offseason. So I would expect at least another couple of weeks or so with no decision, no word from the T.J. Watt front. And then I think things are going to start kind of kicking back into gear once we get closer to the start of training camp. Then we got one from Gabe Edwards, says, would Jalen Ramsey make the Steelers defense the best in the league? Could make an argument it's already the best in the league, in my opinion, okay? Beanie Bishop Jr., though, the nickelback, is probably the weak link, even though he had some big-time plays last year, some interceptions, a lot of interceptions, actually, for someone with limited playing time. Intercepted Aaron Rodgers twice in the Jets game last year. I'm appreciative of Beanie, and he's had a good offseason program, according to the reports on the ground. But Jalen Ramsey is, like, bona fide one of the best nickel defenders in the game today. And, he's an instant upgrade in your base defense with just two corners on the field versus Darius Slay. So I absolutely think that with Jalen Ramsey, this is the best defense in the league. I think they already have the best pass rush in the league. The secondary, I think, has improved this year, but it's definitely the weak spot in the Steelers defense. Adding Jalen Ramsey, I think, gets them over the top where they officially have no holes if there's no injuries in this defense. Then we got Milton Sanchez. Says, do you think Mike Hilton makes a return to Pittsburgh? I think that if Jalen Ramsey goes elsewhere, there is a chance. Because Hilton played his best football of his entire career here in Pittsburgh, all right? He was essentially like an edge rusher here in Pittsburgh. And it's kind of weird the way that they used him because they played him in the slot, but they would blitz him so often that he was essentially an edge player. And they would send somebody else in coverage, one of the outside linebackers, whether that was Dupree or Watt, into coverage, depending on which side Hilton was playing. And, bringing that element of slot cornerback blitzes back into this Blitzburgh defense would be absolutely terrific as far as I'm concerned. He's also a good run defender, can set the edge for kind of a smaller guy, but, he's tough as hell. He's tough as nails. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's one of my all-time favorite players because of the unique role that he played here in Pittsburgh, and they tried to make Arthur Maulet kind of like a Mike Hilton-style corner. He just wasn't the same, man. Just wasn't the same. So even though Mike is a little bit older now, he had a pretty good season for Cincinnati last year. I'm shocked he has not signed to a new team at this point. So I would welcome Mike Hilton back with open arms. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Should the Pittsburgh Steelers bring back Mike Hilton? Give me a yes or no down there in the comments section for today's pinned question. And YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by let me know if you would be supportive of a reunion between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Hilton. Got one from my man Kevin Reed here. Says, do you think if the Steelers roll with Will Howard in 2026, all the beat writers will lose their effing minds? If they do draft a quarterback, I say draft Aller and let him and Howard duke it out. Here's the thing, Kevin. If you're drafting Drew Aller and you're investing a first-round pick in him, he's going to be the franchise quarterback. All right, there's not going to be a competition between a sixth-round pick who you don't really owe anything to and a first-round pick who you're spending a top draft asset on. And you're probably trading up for him if you're getting Drew Aller, by the way. So if that's the situation, Will is going to be Drew's backup. Like, that's going to be the plan for Will Howard. But what I will say here, guys, is that if the Steelers roll with Will Howard, they better be right on it because this is a really good quarterback class coming up in 2026. So if they're going to, say no to these quarterbacks that are coming in next spring for Will Howard, they better be fucking sure that Will Howard is going to be, that next franchise guy. If not, they're going to be very, very disappointed with themselves, and we'll see how he ends up developing this year. We got one from Eugene. My man says, what quarterback should Pittsburgh draft in 2026? Obviously, it depends how these guys play this next year and, what the Steelers are looking for and all that. I would say two guys that I would keep my eye on are Lenora Sellers from South Carolina. He's very Justin Fields-esque in terms of his physical skill set. Big, strong, elite, dynamic athlete with a huge arm. He could win the Heisman Trophy this year, and it's very possible he's the number 1 overall pick. No chance the Steelers can get to him. But if he doesn't have a stellar season, there's a chance that he could be kind of like a developmental type of first-round quarterback prospect, similar to the way Anthony Richardson was when he was coming out of Florida, because his physical upside is huge. So keep your eye out for Lenora Sellers. And then also Drew Aller out of Penn State. He's used to playing in Pennsylvania conditions, big arm, can definitely play in the AFC North. And I really like the way that he protects the football too. So big arm talent, big body, really dynamic arm talent, and then he's got some ability to protect the football too. So I like Drew Aller quite a bit. Then we got one from JT Clover, says over or under Calvin Austin 900 yards. I think that this question is a good one, JT. I think it really does depend on if they add another wide receiver. Because if they bring in Calvin Austin, or if they bring in Amari Cooper, I should say, to be this team's number 2 receiver, Calvin's just not going to see the ball enough to get 900 yards. Now, if he is this team's bona fide number 2 receiver, I think he absolutely could get to 900, all right? Darnell Mooney got over 100 last year, and I think Austin and Mooney, very similar type of players, okay? Undersized, they play on the outside or in the slot. Really good route runners, solid hands. Like Calvin Austin, Darnell Mooney, very similar players to me. So if he's the true number 2, absolutely he could get to 900. If not, I don't think that he's going to get enough targets to get there. But I still think he'll be a good player. Got one from Brian03, says, is Muth underrated or viewed properly? Well, I think it depends who you're talking about. I think Muth is probably seen as a good tight end by most people. And I think that's what he is, all right? Like, I don't think he's terrific. I don't think he's like an all-pro caliber guy necessarily, or at least he hasn't been yet. And I don't think, he sucks. And I think where he's really underrated, Brian, is as a blocker. Like, people talk about Pat like he sucks as a blocker. Now, it's like, okay, if you're going to play him in line and you're going to ask him to go up against an edge rusher in a run-blocking scheme one-on-one, yeah, he's going to get his ass kicked. That's not what he's known for, all right? But, like, as the kind of non-inline tight end, a more of a receiving type alignment, he can get to the second level, handle linebackers, handle safeties, handle those smaller type defenders perfectly fine, and then he's a really good possession type tight end. He's not going to, be super dynamic after the catch or anything like that. I don't think he's like a Travis Kelce or George Kittle level guy or Gronk or anything like that, but he's very, very solid, very dependable, great teammate, hard worker, absolutely a Pittsburgh Steeler. I love Pat Freiermuth. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you are a real one, helps out the channel, takes half a second of your time, tells the YouTube algorithm to put this video in front of more Steelers fans like yourself. So if you're a real one, you know what to do. Click that thumbs up icon. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. My man Ali, coming in with a 5, says, what do you think the record's going to be with Aaron Rodgers this year? Obviously, I think there's a lot of question marks surrounding the Steelers. And obviously, depending on how those questions get answered, it's going to depend on, that's going to be what culminates in the record, right? If the offensive line works out and they take a big step forward, Caleb Johnson has a really good first year. Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson have breakout seasons this year. Like this, the sky's the limit. They could win 13, even 14 games this year, all right? Especially if T.J. Watt stays healthy. But I think that a reasonable estimate is somewhere around the 10-11 win mark. All right, that's where they've been. I think that they're better than they have been in years past. Wouldn't surprise me if it's 11-6. Wouldn't surprise me if it's 12-5, if I'm being completely honest with you. So anywhere between 10 and 12 wins, I think, is a reasonable expectation for a team that was worse last year and got the 10 wins. Then we got one to Shower Curtain here. Love the picture, by the way, man. Says, why is Cordarrelle Patterson still on the roster? What does he bring to the team? He brings veteran experience, I guess, more depth, experience in Arthur Smith's offense in particular. He's been very successful in this offense, and I think that the Steelers might feel like he brings valuable veteran kind of mentorship for Caleb Johnson, who's going to be playing the same role Cordarrelle played in this offense when he was in Atlanta, when he was essentially the number 1 back for Arthur Smith. before they brought in Bijan Robinson. And Cordarrelle is a bigger back that, played on those early downs. He's played a lot in outside zone run schemes. Like, I think they kind of feel like he can be a good mentor for Caleb in training camp. And maybe they still feel like he can bring some special teams, upside. I don't think that, but maybe the Steelers do. Mike Tomlin loves that aspect of his game. He's definitely on the bubble for the roster, and it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't make the roster. But I think that probably the main thing that they like about him is that he can be a good mentor for Caleb Johnson. Then we got one from Trent Latham. It says, how great do you think Jack Sawyer and Nick Herbig will be as rotational pieces? I think that they'll do their jobs. All right, Jack Sawyer, plays his ass off. Good run defender. He's kind of like a brick wall out there, man. He's tough to move. And then Nick Herbig, obviously, as an undersized edge rusher that comes in pass-heavy situations, one of the best designated pass rushers in all of football. So really love what those two guys do. Jack Sawyer is going to be playing that Preston Smith role where he comes in on early downs from time to time, and then Nick Herbig is going to be that pass-heavy down rotational piece that comes in on later downs from time to time. So really love those two rotational pieces. I think it's the best edge rusher room in football, and you can't convince me otherwise. Then we go on from Ali the Reaper, says, do we go after Doubs now? I mean, I don't know what the price tag is from Green Bay, or even if they want to trade it. All right, I know for a fact the Steelers called Green Bay, and they inquired about him. And they also inquired about Dontavian Wicks, by the way. But obviously no deal has surfaced yet. So who knows what the Steelers are thinking? And who knows what the Packers are thinking? Maybe the Packers have this delusion that they're going to keep all these wide receivers going in the training camp and they don't want to trade any of these guys. Maybe they're asking for a third-round pick for one of these guys. We just don't know what's going on, behind closed doors there. But, for the right price, I'm absolutely in grabbing Romeo Doubs. I think he can be a legit number 2 receiver for this team. Milton Sanchez, what's up, Milton? Says, who scores our first TD of the season? Tough to say. I'm going to say they're going to want to get the ball. If they get into the red zone in that first game against the Jets, first time they're in the red zone and the first time they call up a play to try to score a touchdown, they're going to want to have Aaron Rodgers throw a touchdown pass. So I don't know who he throws it to, but I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers passing touchdown, first touchdown of the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hell, let's give it to Darnell Washington, man. Big DW, Mount Washington, big tight end. The Jets defense isn't going to know how to defend that guy. Throws it up, catches it, touchdown DW, touchdown Aaron Rodgers. So take a guess for me down there in the comments section. Who scores the first touchdown of the Steelers season this year? I think Aaron Rodgers will be involved with the play in some capacity, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Great questions this week, as always, guys. We do this mailbag every single week, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support, and until next time, here we go, Steelers.